All right, everybody. My name is DM Cross, and welcome back to Praetor Magic. This is Reflections of the Council. I am joined, as always, by Frexian Walker and Magical Hacker. How are you guys doing tonight?
Doing
Doing
well.
great. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Everybody's doing well. I am not doing well. I'm sick, so I apologize for those of you watching this later on YouTube or listening to it on Libsyn or SoundCloud. If you hear me sound funny or if I cough or sneeze, I'm going to try to edit that stuff out, and Valdor, I'm sure, will try to edit the audio parts out. But I think my kids got me sick, but it kind of came on like at the last minute right before we started, and I didn't want to cancel last minute, so here we are. So we are going to continue anyway. The show must go on. And on this show, we're going to talk about a very interesting topic. And Hacker, you were the one who kind of came up with this topic. So do you want to describe what we're going to do?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you all know this experience, right? You're playing a game of Commander, everybody's having a great time, and then that one person, plays that one card, and when you see that card, all the blood, draws from your face, and you're like, "Ugh, not that card." So we're talking tonight about, for each one of us, we're talking about our three most hated cards that we hate to see somebody else play against us. That's kind of the way that it goes on. And so we each have like his 9 cards total, and I'm really excited to talk about hating stuff because that always gets everybody loves talking about stuff that they hate. So Frixian, do you mind starting off with your number 3 of what's your third most hated card?
If I see this card in a game, I'm very angry because it pretty much means that no one is ever going to play Magic again except for that person. And this card's name is Time Stretch. For 8 and 2 blue, take those 2 extra turns.
Yeah.
Except they don't just take the 2 extra turns.
Nope.
They take the 2 extra turns, then they find a way to recur it to take 2 more extra turns, and then for good measure, they're going to copy it too, so they can take 4 extra turns, and then they might even copy it again and take 6 extra turns. They're going to basically take all the turns. If they're playing this card in their deck, they're playing it in order to try to do something to take all the extra turns and win. They're probably also playing, Beacon of Tomorrow with Planar Bridge and everything else, so they can take all the turns, and no one else actually gets to play Magic unless they just sit there and say, "Oh, we can just cheer you on and be your cheerleaders for all the really cool stuff you're doing," but no one wants to do that.
Those terrible people with those extra turn decks, the players
DP,
and whatnot.
Hey, Expropriate can go in here too, DP Kraus. I'm not a fan of it at all.
Honestly, I feel like if you dislike extra turns, Expropriate isn't as bad because if everybody's smart, then they won't vote for time. They'll all vote for money, and you only take 1 extra turn compared to Time Stretch where you will for sure get 2 extra turns.
I think there's a feel bad of Expropriate basically saying like you have to give me something. You have to make the hard call of give me an extra turn to go off, or give me whatever your best thing is.
Yeah. Definitely Time Warp staple onto a Blatant Thievery for sure. But DP Cross says no one is ever that smart. You know what?
That's fair.
I'm not gonna have a comment to that. Actually, I'm not gonna say anything.
I mean, the latest command cast thing that they did, the extra turns, which ironic, right? It was ironic that they called the series extra turns. Josh Lee Kwai plays Expropriate, and sure enough, Jimmy turns around and says, "No, you're not getting another extra turn from me." And then he gets his Avacyn stolen in sacrifice. So whatever.
Yeah.
And Arshman asked if this was just a category for extra turn cards in general. Pretty much, I just picked Time Stretch as like the pinnacle of the annoying extra turn cards. I mean, I know Expropriate's annoying because it lets you steal everybody's best thing and get extra turn after you stole their best thing. But I really think Time Stretch just takes the cake in terms of, because if they're taking those 2 extra turns, they're going to use 1 turn to recur it, and they're going to use the second turn to cast it again, and you are never going to have another turn.
Yeah,
which is never going to happen.
Yeah. I definitely see that. I personally like extra turns, but after I think all 3 of us can say, because we all have an extra turn deck, right? You guys have extra turn decks as well.
I had one. It's no longer.
Past tense. I got
Past tense. This is
I
right.
still have mine. I don't play it much because I typically only play stream games, and I understand that most people don't want to sit there and just watch me play by myself. So I don't get to play it that much, but I have it just in case the need arises. I'll write a replication on Time String Navigator. Oh, plus with what was it? the Swarm Intelligence was out too, by the way. I forgot that in my story before we got started.
Oh,
So
Yeah.
double kick
Joy.
replication on Time Stream Navigator. It was
Yeah, he
fantastic.
is an awful person.
wow.
What? There's a finite amount of fun in every game of Magic, and I want to have it all. Apparently,
Yeah,
turn
I
after
agree.
turn
I agree
after
with
turn.
what Comson said in the chat that I'm fine with extra turn spells if they exile themselves, and
Yeah.
that's a lot of the extra turn spells they have printed since Time Stretch do exile themselves, and that's good. But Time Stretch doesn't, which puts it in a category of its own.
And
I
why does
definitely agree
Nexus
with
of
you
Fate
there in the
not
chat.
do that?
Yeah, I was gonna actually ask you how
Yeah,
you felt about
why did they
Nexus,
print Nexus of Fate? I don't understand why they printed it all.
Nexus of Fate
I mean-
being the recent buy box promo for M19 is 5 blue instant speed, take an extra turn after this one. If it would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, reveal it and shuffle it into its owner library instead.
Like, why does that card exist?
I don't know.
I don't understand.
Why in the
because
day and
they
age
could've-
we are, when they had become intelligent and were printing extra turn spells that
Mhm.
always exile themselves, did they suddenly print
Mhm.
this? Go ahead, Hacker. What do you have to say? Why did they do it?
I was gonna say it would have been interesting enough if it was like the very first instant speed extra turn spell. That would have been cool enough in my mind. But they had to also make it anti-mill and make it so that if someone mills you out completely, you have infinite turns by that one card. You know, I just don't understand what their idea of it was. Why they wanted to go with that.
Yeah. I don't know. I think if we talk about extra turn card spells and why we don't like them, we'll just talk
here
about
forever?
that all night.
Yeah, we'll
So
hey, we'll keep taking all the extra turns
yeah.
on the extra
Oh
turns.
god, no! I walked into it.
So
Rexing,
DM
what was your next card?
Oh, are we doing all mine in a row, or you want to do your number
Yes.
3? I think I want you to do your number 3.
I don't
Yeah.
want to do it.
Yeah, do your
I
number
want you
three.
to do it.
Okay, fine. So my number 3 is gonna probably be like everybody's gonna be like, oh, that's not that bad. It's really not that bad of a card. It's similar to what Phyrexian did in terms of his card represents kind of the strategy of what you're going to do, and this is a commonly played card of the archetype that it is. So it's the first card you start to see when you're starting to go down this dark alleyway of just what I don't like to see, and it's Sphere of Safety. Again, it doesn't sound super crazy. It's an uncommon, right? So it's why is that big deal? It's an enchantment for 4 and a white. Creatures can attack you or a planeswalker you control unless their controller plays X for each of those creatures, where X is the number of enchantments you control. And what I see this in, for the most part, is stacks decks or like stasis decks, which are typically enchantment based with white and blue. So you wind up not being able to attack, and this is like the first lock piece of slowing the game down, so they can get their other lock pieces in place and basically make it impossible for you to play the game. Especially now with like the Bant enchantment decks, I think like this is a card that you're gonna see setting up the end game or the huge fort for later on. And I hate the archetype. The card a little bit extra because of like personal reasons. My wife liked to play this when we were getting into Magic again. Well, I was getting into it again. She was getting into it for the first time because she's an Azorius mage, like a monster. But yeah, I hate the archetype that this represents, which is that stack. So like, if you want to think about other cards that this could relate to, Stasis, Winter Orb, Torpor Orb, Hushwing Gryph, which is another card that I know Danny likes to play in terms of like stacks player. Grand Arbiter, Augustine the 4th, 5th, etc.
I'm sure the Pendril Veil, something like that. Pendril Veil Miss. I don't know. There's a card out there that is pretty bad too. That would probably fit on your list as well, right, DM?
Yeah, it's just this is like my personal least favorite representation of it. Like Stasis is 10 times worse. But I just like seeing Sphere of Safety is like that's what clues me into, oh, I'm gonna hate playing against you. As my wife in the background decides to talk about how she likes Sphere of Safety, like a monster. But yeah, so it's the archetype that I really hate, but this card representing that archetype.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, Pillar Fort can be so frustrating to play against, especially if you sit down with like a geared up creature deck, and you're like, oh well, I'm not gonna win.
Yeah,
it's like I'm not going to be able to kill them without some extra help because my deck just cannot kill this person. And yeah, I mean, I saw someone say that it does encourage you to build alternate win cons, and that's a good point. Yeah, I guess having this in existence creates you to do infinite win cons. But eventually, the style of deck this usually goes into is about shutting down all possible win cons.
So like, I originally started getting back into Magic, and I was an aggro player, right? Like I like to play like in Theros. I did mono red, the Crone Crusaders with the like targeted spells and writing like making a bunch of tokens, and I could kill people by like turn 4 or 5 with decks like this. Well, one, that's a weaker strategy in EDH, right? I think we, for the most part, all agree on that. And then with decks like this, even building in, like now that I've adapted to more of a graveyard like recursion style, Torpor Orb and Hushwind Gryph shut off a lot of the alternative ways to win, like recurring Gary a lot. I can't do that because now I don't get that effect, right? So again, this card representing that archetype, it still all fits together because now those two cards are going to shut off my deck, and I already figure you're playing those seeing this. First, you're going to stop the attacks to stop the aggro decks, then you're going to start shutting off other pieces of people's decks, and eventually no one's going to play the game but you. But
yeah, and I definitely can see why this is kind of a card that you would hate. I personally, I like playing with it, but I think it's because of stuff like this that I choose to always make sure that I have at least 1 or 2 cards that can get rid of enchantments, and then at least 1 card that can get rid of all enchantments, because you never know when you're going to go up against, someone's got a Sphere of Safety and a Ghostly Prison and a Propaganda and, copy enchantment that's copying the Sphere of Safety. So it's like, even if you can just get rid of 1, there's all those other problem cards too. So I definitely understand where you're coming from. Do you play Sphere of Safety just out of curiosity in any of your decks?
No.
None, not a single one.
No, it's not a card I run. I mean, I'll run like the Ghostly Prisons and the Propagandas, but Sphere of Safety is one I typically don't pull out.
Yeah.
That, and I think Danny has them all in all her decks.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Is that because you just don't have enough copies of it because Danny's hogging them all?
She plays it mainly in her Heliod deck, which, if you think about it, is really rude because it also runs Sarah Sanctum, and it's like, all right, asshole, listen here. You think you're clever, and you're not.
Genius.
Get away.
When are we going to have Danny on the podcast?
Edit this out. Danny can't be here.
Along with a noise procession and...
Hey, what's a card that you hate in Magic, Danny?
Anything that makes me sacrifice my...
There you go. I knew it.
Like
Got Danny on stream.
She won't step in. She's in her pajamas, but she's standing right here. So
is she talking about stuff like Grave Pact?
Yeah.
How does everyone see my jam?
Grave Pact, Dictate, Butcher Malakir. She loves all those so much.
good focus. Hey, we have Danny on stream finally. Hey.
There you go.
All right.
Now I'm leaving.
So yeah, Danny hates the thing that I love the most, which is Grave Pact effects. I actually don't run them in most of my decks because Danny doesn't like them.
I don't play you 1v1 and I told you that before, and I admit to that.
Yeah. But somehow she still plays Sphere of Safety.
But just like if I were to play a straight lockout deck, you'd never play against me because you don't like that. My Detain decks used to hate playing against 1v1.
I just play Crinkle all the time.
Else.
So, Hacker, speaking of shutting people down,
yes.
What is your number 3?
The number 3 that I have is like we've kind of been doing as a theme here is a card to represent a card type, a type of card. And I have here Armageddon. 4 mana, sorcery, 3 simple words, destroy all lands. Okay? Everybody, for some people, they've never seen this card in Commander, and for them, they are so lucky. All right? I wish I could be you. But for me, Armageddon, the fact that it's just representative of the cards that shut down your mana production. So like Armageddon, they cast it. If you're tapped out, your lands are gone. The only way to respond to Armageddon is with a counterspell. That's it. If you don't have a counterspell, you're not going to be able to answer anything that's on the board for a very long time, or you're not going to be able to put any threats on the board for a very long time. And so for me, this could even find its spot in number 2 for me, but Armageddon is it's such a pain to deal with, Red Deck Tries here says lands gots to go if you can win the next turn or so. But here's honestly how I feel. I feel like these cards should have never been printed. And I'm not talking about cards that can destroy a land or 2 lands or make everybody sacrifice down to 3 lands or 4 lands or 5 lands. But when the card just stops all your mana production, or all except for one of your mana production, in my mind, it's like, why am I even playing? Why am I even playing Magic? Why did I sit down here? I won't get salty if someone plays it. I still, will stick around in the game, and I think I've won more games where someone has played an Armageddon than ones that I've lost. Not because I'm that good of a player or whatever, but people don't play it at the right times, for whatever reason. But this one, it gets my gears a grinding. Let me just put it that way. What do you guys think about Armageddon?
I personally, and I think I'm outspoken enough about this that most people are gonna already know that this is coming, but mass land destruction is not as bad as people make it out to be. The reason is because there are spells printed every set that are like more and more ramp, better and better ramp, more and more ways to get land out. But white and even red, right, because red has some land destruction effects, never really have ways to do that nearly as bad or nearly as well. So they need something to do it, and that was the original thought, right, into these cards. Everybody, like you just said, Hacker, they should have never printed them. The original idea was that if every other color is going to ramp up, that red and white would have the answers to them. So blue ramps up through rocks a little bit better, right? Red blows up rocks really well, so does white. White blows up lands really well, and red does a little bit too. And that's everybody, that's like the answer that they have to have in order to balance things out. And honestly, I think the social contract that we have in EDH is just unfair to white and red players entirely. And that's like I'm a Golgari player, so I love ramp. But to see the mono white angel deck sit there and do almost nothing because they're at 5 lands on turn 5, whereas I'm at 10 lands, like when you drop an Armageddon, it's like, yeah, I understand. I get it. I understand why you have to do it. So that's me personally. I don't know if Frexen feels differently.
I'm kind of in the middle on this one, that because it's a social game, and like the situation you're talking about, like I'm okay with Armageddon in the situation that you're playing it and like you're going to win based off the fact you've played it. Like your board state is superior and you've played Armageddon because it's the best play and you're going to win. I'm not so much okay with it in the fact that it's going to hose everybody else in hopes that you can win. Like I don't like that, because I don't like it's the same thing as why I don't really like stacks effects and stuff like that. It's because it slows down the game so much, and I don't want to sit there being like, okay, well, everybody at the table has played out all their lands, so yeah, I've drawn out 10 lands, so I'm less likely to draw my lands than you are, but we're still sitting here, draw, go, waiting for people to draw enough lands to actually play Magic again. That's my main problem with it. Like when it's used as like a game finisher, I have no problem with it even in EDH, but when it's being used to like just slow down the game, so well maybe if I slow everybody else down, I can get ahead of them before. Like there was a player in my playgroup who used to play the red one, Jockalups, in one of his decks. But like he didn't play it like it wasn't I have the board state, I'm gonna win. He literally played it like I'm gonna kill everything and then maybe I can restart and get back on top. You know, like get on top after the dust settles. Maybe I can be the one who gets out fast enough and ramps out fast enough and gets my lands and artifacts back in play fast enough. So
now, what you mentioned about it being fair game in your mind when it's being used as a win con, that's drastically different than what DM was saying related to why that he thinks that they're fair, is because they kind of help equalize the opposite of what ramp is doing for the black and for the green players, and a little bit for the blue players as well. Yeah. What if instead of doing this, right, instead of just destroying all lands, they had printed out effects that are more like balance, and they did a few of those in the beginning. But if they had printed more where it's like everybody sacrifices lands until they have as many lands as the player with the least amount, see, those types of cards I think would be totally fair. And I honestly think that it's kind of a surprise that we don't have a lot more of those effects and that people don't play them.
See, I like balance. I don't mind balance.
Yeah, balance. The only thing, and this is kind of related to Cataclysm, someone in the chat asked about that. Who was it? It was
Yeah, that's way up there.
Al Smartman. Smartman was asking about it. Yeah, for me, Cataclysm and balance, because they affect other things, they're not as good for kind of counteracting the ramp as they could be, right? Because if all it affected was just the lands, then they would be super, focused to preventing ramp from getting out of hand. But because they do other stuff too, they affect the cards in your hand, they affect the artifacts, the creatures. I don't remember exactly what balance does, but something along those lines. And balance is banned in the format DP Cross. They were asking if it's banned. It is banned, but there are other balance like effects.
So real quick, balance is a white sorcery for 1 and a white. It's a mythic. It is banned, like you said. Each player chooses a number of land he or she controls equal to the number of lands controlled by the player who controls the fewest, then sacrifices the rest. Players discard cards and sacrifice creatures the same way. So basically, whoever has the least of those 3 categories goes down or sets the bar for everybody else to go down too. Like that. See, the problem that I have with things like balance as opposed to just destruction is that it's again like that social, that mentality, right? The reason why mass land destruction isn't done is the mentality we have against it is that if you do it and you don't win, people are going to try to kill you. But in reality, I think that's not fair. You shouldn't just be focused on trying to kill that one person because they tried to do well in the game or to try to bring the game back in their favor, because everybody should be trying to do that unless you're like unless they're going to do it every other turn. Then maybe. But for the most part, I think we have to be more understanding of the idea that some decks do need to pull everybody back. And it's the same thing for mass sacrifice. Or it's really the same thing for board wipes. In a creatureless deck, if you board wipe all the time, you're doing the same thing, just with a different card type. But
yeah.
I think we're kind of running into the same thing here with that we ran into with the extra turn spells, though, is that we could literally talk about we could do a separate stream on why extra turn spells are not good, why land mass land destruction is or is not good.
So that was everybody's their lowest most hated card, right?
I know, right?
We have 2 more, at least I do.
Yeah, so let's Phyrexian, you went first originally, so why don't you go with your second?
All right. My second is Rest in Peace. I'm a Golgari Mage, people. This card gets me like no other card can get me. It probably should be number 1, but I did find one card that gets me a little bit more. But it's 1 and a white. When Rest in Peace enters the battlefield, exile all cards from all graveyards. And if a card or token would be put into a graveyard from anywhere, exile instead. So not only does it remove your
graveyard
and prevents you from getting another graveyard, but it also removes all your death triggers. Because it doesn't die anymore. It's automatically exiled. It stops everything from dying. I don't know why you print a card that is such like just hoses Reanimator, hoses Graveyard Strategies, hoses like any strategy, like even flashback cards, the new Jumpstart cards, the Retrace cards. All these cards are just completely hosed by this card. It's great. And I mean, you'll never see it in our 3H format because it's so great in Modern, and even see some play in sideboards and Legacy decks, because it's literally hoses so much of like so many archetypes. Turns off Tarmogoyfs, makes like it's just so good, like so insanely good. And I know why people play it, because it does work against, like I said, it works against so many archetypes. But it annoys me so much, and it's cards like this, like cards that just like shut down what other people are trying to do. You aren't trying to like benefit your own game and like help your game plan. Your game plan is shutting down other people. So it's stuff like this. It's stuff like Rule of Law, where it's only cast 1 spell a turn, or Torpor Orb. I throw in this, where it's like, oh, you're playing a rune deck. Well, too bad. None of your creatures do anything.
Yeah,
or Overwhelming Splendor also goes in my list for this type of card, where it's just like everything is now, all of your stuff is now a 1/1, and none of your artifacts can tap for mana, and none of this. So it's the stuff that just shuts other people down rather than like actually benefiting your game. And I'm fine with like getting rid of graveyards. I know graveyard hate needs to exist, but this literally like completely shuts a graveyard deck down, because they don't get death effects, they don't get anything. If that's in play, they're just done.
And even if it just enters,
quality graveyard hate, though, Thermo King. That's what I'm saying. Like quality graveyard hate is stuff like Tormod Script, Nihil Spellbomb, Bajuka Bog. That is quality graveyard hate. This literally, if they don't find a way to remove it, their game is done. They can do nothing.
And even if they do remove it, I mean, the graveyard's already got exiled simply from it entering.
I mean, that's the same thing with Bajuka Bog, though. You know what I mean? I think And I think this is kind of going back to what we talked about with the first two cards that we went over, is that this represents an archetype that we're getting into. So you see Rest in Peace, they're not just playing Rest in Peace. They're then going to drop Torpor Orb. They're then going to drop Hushing Grift. They're going to drop more stacksy effects that are going to stop you from doing the thing you want to do, regardless of what it is. This is, these are just one thing, like we're talking about Graveyard Hate specifically, but it's one aspect of the whole archetype that basically says you don't get to do what you want to do in Magic. So I don't know why you're sitting here.
So
You know what I mean?
if it was just in a deck, simply because some players say that every deck should have at least one card that does Graveyard Hate. If that's why it was in a deck, would that be okay with you, as opposed to being in a dedicated stop everybody from doing anything deck? DM.
Am I okay with just the one effect?
Yeah, would you be okay with like a one effect of something that just, like, for example, let's say someone has a Torpor Orb, just because they know that people will, like, their deck is weak to ETB stuff, for example. Would you be upset with that? Because it sounds more like that you're hating that deck archetype rather than the card itself. And I just kind of wanted to see your input on that.
So the
more.
problem is, and I think Phyrexian has the same mentality that I do, is that people will say that, right? Like, people will say, oh, I'm running Sanguine Bond because it's good in my lifelink deck, but I'm not running Exquisite Blood to combo out. And we even had a conversation that nobody believes you're not really running Exquisite Blood.
Yeah.
You could say it, and it could be true. I've done it. I've run Sanguine Bond because I've run Cabal Life Gain. However, people still got rid of Sanguine Bond right quick because what if DM's, a jerk and then is running the other one? And that's the thing, is that you could say in a game, I'm only running this one effect because. But the reality is I don't believe you. It's the same thing like when you sit down at the table and you reveal your commander's Narset. You could say, oh, I'm not doing like the extra turn mass land destruction Narset, but I don't believe you. Because if you are, and I give you even a little bit of leeway, you're gonna put a lock on the game.
Right.
You know what I mean?
But
so you can't always.
Do you think it's pretty common for people to just outright lie?
I think I've seen people forget or not realize that they can do more than what they say.
Yeah.
That's giving people the
I have
benefit
seen
of the
that.
doubt, right?
Yeah.
That is very much saying, oh, I believe you, but what really happened was. I've seen people say, oh, I didn't realize I could combo out this way. I didn't realize these cards worked in a combo. But the reality is you just comboed all over my face. Yeah. So I'll give you the benefit of doubt and assume that you didn't know. However, next time I see this deck, I'm going to make sure you don't do it again. Regardless of, oh, I didn't know I could do it. Yeah, maybe. That's fine once. Yeah. It's like a free pass, right? But once that free pass is over, you've used it in a meta. And I think Phyrexian, you're pretty much the same mindset, right, with that?
Yeah. I mean, it does happen a lot too. That I'll find people who may not necessarily lie about what their deck's trying to do, but they might mislead. You know, like deliberately mislead, like try to underplay or undersell. Like, oh, this deck really isn't as good as you think it is. 3 turns before they infinite combo out, and it's like, oh yeah, this deck's not as good as I thought it was because you didn't infinite out 2 turns sooner. Yeah. So I will have people who like try to mislead a lot, and I'll admit to being a politicker myself, and I'm one of those people who, as the game's going on, I might try to, that's part of the game is politicking, trying to like affect people's judgments on what's going on in the game. So
absolutely.
So whether it's outright lying, I don't know that I've ever had someone say this card's not in the deck and then they play that card. But they also could say this card's not in the deck and then that card's in their hand the entire time and just never play it because they're like, oh, I just said that card's not in the deck, so I can't play it now.
Oh, it wasn't in the deck. It was in my hand. It's not in my library.
That's what you always. It doesn't cost anything to
see if it's there.
What'd you say,
for you want to make them discard or mill their whole deck?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, mill their whole deck, windfall. Then you can see what's there.
Fair.
And then they can,
then they can't lie anymore.
Living death and win the game anyway.
What if they living death 3 times? Never mind. We're not going to talk about that.
Just play Rest in Peace.
No,
so they can't do that.
You're part of the problem.
What's the number 2?
Yeah, what's your number 2, DM?
So it's again a similar thing where it's not necessarily just the card. Well, no, it is actually this particular card. I dislike this version or this part of the archetype, but it's again the archetype. It's one that I'm very vocal about again because I hate it, and every time somebody brings it up, I tell them that I hate it. Possibility Storm goes into a lot of chaos decks. I hate chaos decks. It's literally you're bringing a deck where the only person having fun is you because you're messing up literally everything everybody wants to do, even if it's just like ramp, even if it's just like playing simple stuff. You're basically saying I don't care about what anybody else in this game wants to do. I'm just gonna sit here and laugh and laugh and laugh. It's like the some men just want to watch the world burn kind of deck, and I don't understand why you're playing a social game.
The Nero deck.
Like that. Yeah, I don't understand why if you're playing a game to be with your friends, why that's fun. Or if you're playing with strangers, I hope you don't expect to make friends then, because if I'm at the table, you're probably making me punch you in the face. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not gonna really punch anybody in the face. But just
But in
stuff
your
like
heart,
this.
you did.
Yeah, it's in my mind. I punched them all over in their face. Possibility Storm, for those who don't know, is 3 red enchantment. Whenever a player casts a spell from their hand, that player exiles it, then exiles cards from the top of their library until they exile a card that share a card type with it. That player may cast that card without paying its mana cost. Then they put all cards exiled with Possibility Storm on the bottom of their library in a random order. Not only do I hate this effect, but do you understand how complicated this is to new players? And we talk all the time.
It's a lot of words.
Yeah, we talk all the time about like having a learning curve to the format because it's already complex the more and more the game goes on. But now you have like how do you explain to somebody easily how to do this? In paper it's really easy because you kind of walk them through it, but like we mostly play online here. So how do you explain to somebody what's about to happen when they see this hit the field? And they're like, oh, should I counter this? And you're like trying to tell them, like, you don't understand. If you don't counter it now, you don't counter ever. Or you're going to be very lucky to get a counter, right? Depending on how your deck's working, blah, blah, blah. So it's just like... people take advantage of that too. Oh, it's not that bad. You get to play stuff for free.
Yeah.
Thieves
you can cast
Auction,
a 1-drop.
World, all these things are horrible.
Now, I have a question.
Real quick. Warp World is another one. That's a chaos one, but it's not as bad because the chaos isn't.
It doesn't stay around.
Yeah,
it happens and then it goes away.
Yeah, it's the worst part about Warp World is when you don't have a lot of permanents and you don't get enough lands back. Right, like you have your 5 lands and like 2 things, and then you wind up with only 2 lands. That's the worst part about Warp World because then it creates an awkward situation, and that one person just probably sits out the game until they draw more lands, or they wind up just dying, not doing anything at that point. That's the worst part about Warp World. This literally just says everybody doesn't know what's going on anymore. And I think this is actually worse than Warp World. I've seen too many people get the shaft on Warp World, which is why I talk about it a lot. But then it's also because Valdor likes to joke about Warp World a lot, so that's probably why you hear about that one more, but I think Possibility Storm I hate more than Warp World.
Now, I have a question. There are certain decks, I know it's I don't know if anybody's going to like me for saying this, but there are certain decks where these types of cards actually provide some value. It's not just trying to hurt everybody equally. They're trying to actually abuse the card. So like Warp World in a deck that doesn't have any instants or sorceries, right? Compared to decks that have lots of instants or sorceries, they're going to get really hurt with a Warp World. The one that I think of more with Possibility Storm, though, is, and I run this in a red-green Enchantress deck, where you have those cards that say whenever you cast an enchantment spell, draw a card. So with Possibility Storm, you cast an enchantment, and you go and you cast a second enchantment, so it doubles up on those draw triggers. If I were playing in something like that, where it's not dedicated chaos, it's just the one card, again, would that be something that would hurt, that you would be against DM? And I don't know, Frixian, were you saying that you dislike the chaos stuff here too? I guess it's a question for both of you, I guess.
It didn't make my top 3, but I'm definitely not a chaos player, a fan of chaos player. When I'm playing Magic, I'm very deliberate about my plays, so I don't like it when someone plays an effect that says, oh, you don't get to plan at all. It doesn't matter what your plans are, because I mean, you're just trusting that you get lucky. Yeah, you can play this instant, hoping like you're in green, so you can play the instant, hoping that you hit the Croson grip, so that you can get rid of this thing.
But
But
there's
that's
no
about all
guarantee.
you can do is just hope for the best.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I don't like it.
Yeah.
I like planning my plays out. I like knowing what I'm doing. I like having a plan for victory, even if
So-
it doesn't work out. I don't like that it takes away your ability to plan effectively.
Yeah, I get you. I totally understand. I'm laughing here at Bushcrafty said I'm not allowed to play. I'm not allowed to build it and play on stream.
I honestly do ask people not to play Chaos Effects just because it can be one again like it's complicated to explain. So if the video winds up being something I do want to put on YouTube, I have to put a lot more effort into trying to explain what's happening for people who might not understand the format or those cards as well. But it's also
Right.
just for people to sit there and watch, and it's like everybody's now, I don't know what's going to happen next. And there's a suspense to that that's entertaining, and I understand that. But it's just like the game can just drone on for no reason because bad plays happen then. It turns your well planned plays with your hand into just random stuff happening that isn't good or might not be good, depending on what it is. You don't know because it's chaos. And that's kind of what I have about it. So if somebody, to answer your question, Hacker, if somebody plays this one effect, and again, like the chat was talking about Mishra, where they really, they're using it to basically make Mishra a valid commander. Me, personally, if the sacrifice of not seeing chaos is to not see Mishra decks, I'm sorry, Mishra and Mishra fans, I don't care about your commander anymore. I don't like the archetype. I'm sorry. Like I'm willing to make that sacrifice.
Yeah.
Personally, so
I mean, I just love playing with enchantments. So I think that's the only reason why I even see Possibility Storm as something that I would like, and that kind of ties into what my number 2 is here. My number 2 is Aura Shards, 3 mana for an enchantment. It's in Selesnya. It says whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, you may destroy target artifact or enchantment. So anytime you get your commander, a token, just any creature, you can get a free naturalize. And I don't know if this is like a surprise. People will play a lot of creatures, but for me personally, I love my enchantments. I love my artifacts. Those are 2 of my favorite types. Like more than instants, sorceries, creatures, planeswalkers, even lands. I like artifacts and I like enchantments. So anytime I see this Aura Shards down, my question is, well, do I have a way to get rid of this enchantment, or do I have like dead cards in my hand for the rest of the game until I get one? That's my question. This is like a 3-drop. What's that like Eldrazi that stops all the even cards? You know what I'm talking
Void
about?
Winnower.
Yeah.
It's not a 3-drop, it's like a 9-drop.
Yeah, but this is like a 3-drop version of it. Just to kind of give the analogy here, let me go ahead. I'm going to read Void Winnower, what it says. It's a colorless creature, costs 9 mana. It's an 11/9 Eldrazi. It says your opponents can't cast spells with even converted mana costs, and your opponents can't block with creatures with even converted mana costs. So when you play it, you just look at your hand, you're like, well, half my hand is dead now. And that's how I feel with Aura Shards, unless I've got a removal spell. And the same thing with Void Winnower, unless I have a removal spell to it.
And I think what you're saying is exactly why, as a graveyard player, I hate Rest in Peace.
Yeah.
So I'm agreeing with you 100%. I get you love Artifacts Enchantment. You hate this card. It's the same reason I hate Rest in Peace. Ironically, this card can get rid of Rest in Peace.
But it doesn't put it in the graveyard. It puts it in exile, right?
And I want to agree with what Crimson Wanderer said. The thing that makes Aura Shards annoying is it has the May clause. Because otherwise you could sit and wait it out, and eventually they're either going to have to stop playing creatures or they're going to have to kill their own Aura Shards.
Yeah,
but
that would be
May,
so well. Yeah, that would be great. I think that would be fantastic.
If they errated it, got rid of the May, and said, you destroy target artifact or enchantment, one, it's not as good, I know, but 2, like I don't think it's quite as annoying card, because basically it just says you can destroy all your opponent's artifacts and enchantments for the rest of the game until they figure out how to remove this.
Yeah.
And you never have to destroy any of yours. Like, you never have to make a sacrifice yourself.
No,
So it'd be a lot better if it was printed the way like Harmonic Sliver was, where it says, whenever a Slitter enters into play, destroy target artifact or enchantment. So whenever a creature enters play, destroy target artifact or enchantment instead of you may.
And I think here you were comparing it to Rest in Peace, Frixian. And I think that's a great comparison. The only difference that I kind of see is most decks, like, they'll have one or two ways to get something out of the graveyard. Some decks, they're just totally, all in on graveyard strategies. Aura shards, it kind of like hoses everybody. There's very few decks that would not get hit that bad by an aura shard, at least from my opinion. DP Cross here says, so what I'm learning from tonight's council meeting is to run more answers and removal spells. Yes.
That's a good lesson.
If that's a good, if that's the takeaway, you've got there, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
We've done it. We've taught the masses.
Yeah. People do not play Boom Pile enough. And Boom Pile, I just have had such a great time with it. Do you want to read Boom Pile, DM, or do you want to read that?
I can bring it up, but you can read it.
Yeah, I'll read it. Boom Pile, 4 mana artifact, has one ability. You tap and you just tap it, actually. That's all you do. You just tap it. Flip a coin. If you win the flip, destroy all non-land permanents. So for 4 mana in as an artifact, so something that's pretty easy to recur, that any deck can play, you can get rid of, you can basically play a planar cleansing or a Hour of Revelation, where you destroy all non-land permanents. This is just, it's been so good for me. And even if you don't win the first flip, right, it's pretty unlikely that you'll lose 2 flips in a row. So even when you lose the first flip, it's still a better.
As a math teacher, I'm going to have to disagree with you. It's equally likely that you lose 2 flips in a row.
Well, it's equally.
They're independent events, so your probability is always 50%.
Right. It's as easy. It's as equal as any other of the 4 possible combinations, right? But it's only 1/4 of the time that you'll lose 2 flips.
No, that's only if you're flipping 2 coins. They're independent events. The first flip is different than the second flip, so it's always 50%.
Right. So the first one, you'll 50% get there, right? So you're only having 50% where you did not get there. So it doesn't matter what you
every time though. It's always 50%.
Yeah.
And then the next time. Yeah, it definitely doesn't stack, but the next time it's still a 50% overall. Looking at both the 2 flips, 25%
because they're independent events.
Yeah, you're not. It's not this with Karg's thumb. That's the problem, because that's why when they say Karg's thumb gives somebody 75% chance to win a flip, it's because it's a one instance of getting a result. Once you've done an action and got the result, your probability is locked into that bubble. You can't do the broad stroke thing for getting a result per action for what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
damn it, statistics class.
I don't disagree with the statistics of it, but when you're looking at something compared to Nevinral's disc, you'll have to wait a turn anyways for a card like that. Boom Pile, you can activate it right away, and half the time you'll have to do it on the second time. So it's even in that situation, it's still better than Nevinral's disc. It's a very small amount of time that it's worse than Nevinral's disc. I just love Boom Pile. I think I played it in a mono red deck because I didn't have enough answers to enchantments. And so when I would go up against an enchantment deck, I was like, I need to have at least something. And Boom Pile, I thought in my mind, I was like, this looks pretty garbage, right? But it does the job sometimes.
The art is literally a pile of garbage.
It is. It does look like a literal pile of garbage. But then I played it, and man, it just saved my butt so many times. Now I feel like I play it in every deck that does not have white. But let's
go on.
Yeah.
To a card
What's your number 1?
Can be destroyed by Boom Pile, which is the Winter Orb.
Yeah. Yeah.
The Winter Orb is no fun.
Like all these effects.
Because most of the time when someone is playing this, they're also running ways in their deck that they can actually, tap it.
Mm-hmm.
Or they're
running away to force it to
something.
tap. Yeah. No, not. They're running a Icy Manipulator or something like that. Something that they can manipulate it where it's tapped during their turn, so they can untap everything, and then you're stuck doing nothing. Like your lands are staying tapped, and they're untapping all their lands. Like usually they have a way to manipulate this card to tap it before their untap step. So when they untap, it all untaps instead. And that's what annoys me more about this card, even in things like, Stasis Orb or Stasis itself. Like the people who run this, they run ways to find a way to make sure they're abusing it to their greatest advantage. So they're stalling out everyone else. And once again, it's you sitting there watching them play Magic. And then
Yeah.
you doing very little to nothing or having to wait turns to make your plays.
Yeah. This
Now-
when I thought of like sphere safety, I also did think of like winter orb and stuff. I just again my thing for sphere safety is that you see that more than you see in my circles anyway. I see sphere safety a lot more than I see winter orb. I don't think people feel as comfortable playing winter orb as they do like the later stacks effects. So that's but I'm of the same mind with you on this archetype as a whole. Phyrexian, so
And it's funny that you mentioned that because Armageddon was kind of like my representation for the Winter stuff too. So it's kind of funny that we all three put something from the same category, but
Yeah.
3 different cards. And this was not like planned. We didn't plan to do that. It's just how our lists were. And this is kind of a question for both you guys and for all of chat. Of those 3 cards, so you've got Sphere of Safety, Winter Orb, and Armageddon. Which card would you hate to see the most? And I guess it's kind of obvious where we stand, right?
yeah.
The 3 of us. You'd rather see Winter, or you'd rather see Armageddon over Winter Orb, right, Frixian?
I would definitely rather see Armageddon over Winter Orb.
Is it because of the ability to tap Winter Orb down, or just because it costs only 2 mana, or both?
Well, 1 because it's the lower CMC, 2 because you have the ability of manipulating it better where it's not symmetrical. Like Armageddon is going to be symmetrical, quote unquote. Winter Orb, you can definitely manipulate where it's not.
Yeah. I think for the most part you're gonna see Winter Orb because overall of the 3 cards, I think Winter Orb is the strongest.
Yeah,
Right.
he put it as number 1. It should be.
And again, like if I saw Winter Orb more, I'm sure I would think of this before Sphere of Safety. Even before like Armageddon, because Armageddon came up in my mind a little bit too of at first I started doing this list as things people don't like to see, and I wanted to bring Armageddon up as a topic. And then I was like, oh, well, I actually don't mind Armageddon that much, so it doesn't make sense to go in my list. So it was actually kind of funny that somebody else brought it up. So it was good, but it was odd that I thought about it and then said no because I don't mind it. So, but yeah, I think you're always going to see people say Winter Orb is the worst of it because people don't play it without having that advantage. It's right back to what we've been talking about this whole time. You're not playing one off. You're playing a way to abuse these effects.
Yeah, this effect is never played in a vacuum.
Yeah.
I mean, on the bright side though, so for me, there is at least a little bit of a bright side. You get that 1 mana untapped. If you play a land on top of that, you've got 2 mana to play a naturalize effect, and you can get back into the game. Whereas for me, I'd rather see Winter Orb over Armageddon simply because of the fact that there is a possibility that I can remove it or somebody else can remove it. Armageddon, those lands go away, they're gone.
Nope, you protect the pieces. That's not how Stack Decks works.
Yeah,
Stack Decks play Darksteel Forge, they play Padim, they give it Hexproof. They play what's the other one that gives
the one in white.
Yeah. There's always you're again
I
like
forget its name, but it gives all artifact shroud, yeah.
Yeah, you're not playing these pieces and expecting nothing to happen. You're playing these pieces expecting to establish your win. So if you play Winter Orb early, you're probably silly. Winter Orb is like a mid-game play where you've already got kind of the pieces. Like Padim's out, so now you can Winter Orb because
it turns the late game into the mid game.
Turns the mid game into the everybody hates their lives game. So.
Yeah. All right, DM, what's your number 1 top most hated card?
So mine's a newer card, and if everybody,
that's not fair.
If everybody in chat knows me well enough, they're gonna know that I hate this card. And then I'm gonna even go a little bit deeper than I normally go. One of the reasons why I hate this card is because it's similar to other cards played in a color that I love, and I hate how friggin' lazy. Somebody in chat has already gotten it. Torment of Hailfire is my most hated card to see because it's a sloppy card. This is the laziest card I've ever seen them print. This is the laziest thing I've ever seen them print, where it's basically just ruin the experience for everybody. So Torment of Hellfire is a
not everyone, just your opponent.
Hey, you stop it. It's a rare black sorcery. It's an X black. Repeat the following process X times. Each opponent loses 3 life unless that player sacrifices a non-land permanent or discards a card. The best scenario with this is that they pay enough into it where you're dead no matter what. I don't mind it as much then. I think it's a lazy win. It's almost as bad as most 2-card combos where like Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood, where you should get pretty bored playing those kind of combos, but at least you're ending the game. The worst way to play this is you only put enough mana into it to where I sit here without a board and a hand because I had to survive, hoping I would top deck something, and I hate the next few turns. And I now hate you for playing this card, and everybody's miserable because we have nothing to do.
And there's so many ways that they could have fixed that card too. They could have made it so much better. You know, they could have made it so you can only target one opponent with effect. They could have made it so you can sacrifice lands.
They could have made it hit everybody. If it had hit everybody, then you're accepting the fact that you're accepting the fact that you're possibly going to be in just as bad of a situation. Then you run it in life gain decks and you probably just eat the life or whatever, but at least it's giving you something, or it's taking something away from you. This is one of the laziest things I've ever seen in Magic, where it's basically pump 5 mana into X and just make everybody miserable in like mid-game. You could do with 7 mana, which in black and typically like green or even blue, black, blue,
that's
or
nothing.
black, green. That's I could turn 5 this and make everybody just 3 turns behind me now.
Yeah.
And then it's black, it doesn't exile itself. There's ways to recur this if you're doing black, blue, or black, green. So you bring it back and you do it again. And you just keep doing it and keep making people feel worse and worse and worse and worse about the game. It's just a bad game for Commander.
Yeah.
Specifically. I think it's probably fine in Standard because it's a 1v1 format and you don't, like, if I put you that many turns back, you probably just scoop and that's fine. But for Commander, where it's a social game and we're supposed to be all having fun, this is just I don't care that you're trying to have fun. I literally don't care about anybody else at this table if you're not winning the game with this. That's how I feel about this game.
You mentioned the difference between Commander and Standard, and I think the multiplayer aspect is the biggest part of this, right? If you're in a multiplayer game, being the one who has the biggest board state, the scariest board state, that means that you're going to have a hard time winning. Whereas in Standard, that's a good thing, right? And so you're trying to get a big board state. That's why Torment of Hailfire, I think, is totally fine in 1v1 things, because it's again trying to make it really, you're trying to have a scary board state. Torment of Hailfire is really good against that. But in a multiplayer aspect where you're trying to not be scary and get to the point where you can win, Torment of Hailfire kind of just skips all that process and goes straight to, I put enough into X, so now I win. You know? Because they had to sacrifice all the creatures, now I can attack with my creatures and kill everybody.
But, so I do want to point out, All Smart Man says, how's this different from other feel-bad effects like Mass Land Destruction or Cyclonic Rift? For Cyclonic Rift specifically, because a lot of people, at least that I've talked to on Twitter, have been kind of comparing the two, Cyclonic Rift is not the same. You're not taking people's cards away from them. You're taking their board state, but they can replay it, and that sucks to a degree, but I'm fine with Cyclonic Rift in the format. Yes, it's a one-sided wipe, but everybody can redo their things. So unless you're doing like Cyclonic Rift and then Windfall or like a mass discard, then that's pretty rude. But Cyclonic Rift by itself is literally just everybody take a turn off.
This is literally forces you to sacrifice and then most likely discard your hand just to survive.
This is literally saying take multiple turns off and have fewer and fewer resources. And again, with Mass Land Destruction, I'm okay with it being played in the way of you are so far, you're the one behind, and you're needing to either rebalance or catch up. Torment of Hailfire, you're typically already kind of ahead, and you're using it as a like a lockdown piece on people's hands. I'm not a big fan of like hand strategies. I'm not a big fan of like commanders like Nath or stuff like that anyway, so maybe that's why I have a personal preference for this, because it is sacrifice or discard. When it comes to sacrificing like creatures, that's typically fine. The fact that it's any non-land permanent, so it's basically you could sacrifice everything and be down to just your lands, and then have to start discarding your cards. It's literally taking everything away from somebody. Cyclonic Rift doesn't do that, it just slows you down. So that's and
sometimes it doesn't slow people down that much. I've definitely cast Cyclonic Rifts where the person's board state is almost back to where it was the next turn.
Yeah.
Or even better.
Yeah, and a late game Cyclonic Rift is really not that bad. A late game Torment of... And again, if it's the end of the game, I guess that's fine. But a late game Torment of Hailfire a lot of times won't end the game because people have enough permanents to sacrifice. Or like you'll have that Reliquary Tower deck have enough cards to discard. but they'll be down to like 2 cards by the end, and they're probably not having a good board presence by then either. I don't know. There's just too many situations where it just feels really bad, and it's, to me, again, a sloppy design.
DP Kraus asks, does the same weight fall in the same category? I would say similar, but not the same. Because with Torment, it's 3 damage for each 1 mana you're putting in if they choose not to sacrifice a permanent or discard a card, whereas Exsanguinate is a 1-for-1. So it's not quite as good. I'd say a better comparison might be Debt to the Deathless. I think it kind of goes on a spectrum. Exsanguinate's probably a little bit weaker than Debt to the Deathless. Is a little bit better, and then you have Torment of Hellfire. But I'd say Torment's even still better than Debt to the Deathless, even though you aren't getting the life gain back as far as a finisher goes, because you're getting that 3 damage, or just crippling their board state in hand to the point that they can't interact with you anymore. I think it's the best of the 3. They have similar veins because obviously they're all X spells that have a huge impact and should be close to game enders, if not game enders, or at very least like put you far ahead. But Torment just does it so much better, I suppose.
So Esper Derek said almost everybody uses it for, and I'm assuming he means to end the game. I don't know. The first 3 times I seen this card cast against me, it was just to cripple me, and I lingered on for like 5 turns. And that's when I think it was after like the 3rd time it happened, I was like, I just hate this card. This is just a terrible card.
And Esper, if yours hadn't been counterspelled on stream the other night, it wouldn't have killed anyone but Bush.
Yeah.
Like, Bush would have died, but DM and I would have both still been alive. We had enough things to discard or sacrifice. We would have lived through it, but we would have been hampered from playing the game. But we would have lived through it, and then you would have had to find a way to kill us.
Yeah. And again, if you generate 30 mana and the game is over, fine.
But I think more often than not, like you're saying, though, it doesn't get there. Like, it's just short. People are casting it when they have like 10 mana to put into it and doing it for 8 when it's not going to kill everybody. It's just going to hurt. Rather than doing it for like the 30 mana that it would take to actually, 30 is probably an overkill, but the 15 to 20 it would take to actually kill the table if they didn't have permanents to sacrifice.
Yeah, so again, we're not saying it's a bad play in terms of like strategic. It's just it feels terrible in a multiplayer game. That's again, we're talking about the social aspect of the game where everybody should have fun. That card is, in my opinion, even more not fun than Mass Land Destruction. I think you can typically come back from Mass Land Destruction better than not having any cards in your hand. Because Mass Land Destruction, as soon as you get cards, as soon as you get lands again, you start rolling again. This literally says you probably don't have anything for a little while, or at all, or ever. Hand Destruction to me is worse than Land Destruction, actually.
I agree. I think having no mana and having no cards in hand, they're very, very similar. Because you have to draw more cards to play more cards. You have to draw more lands to play more lands. It's just based on what you can top deck to get yourself out of that situation of not being able to do anything. Yeah. That's why I see them so similar. But you said that it's a lazy win. I think that's where I agree the most. It's just because of the nature of the format. I just think it's really, really, really easy for a black player to play this card and to win. Clicky. And there was also, I think it was either New Dark Cloud or Esper Derek that asked about Death Cloud as well. How do you guys feel about that? Because that strips both your lands and your hand. And I can read Death Cloud real quick here. Death Cloud
hits them too.
Death Cloud costs X and 3 black for a sorcery that says each player loses X life, discards X cards, sacrifices X creatures, and sacrifices X lands. I think this gets DM and Frixian and me and Danny. We all hate for a different reason maybe, but we all hate this card, right?
But this is at least everybody.
At least, this
Torment literally just says everybody else can go to hell. This is a card you play to when you're in a bad, like, you shouldn't be playing this unless you're in a bad spot, right? Is that a fair assessment? Yeah. Where you need to do this to live. Torment of Hellfire is you could just kind of fire it off just to keep crippling people, and again, you're probably playing it in decks where you're going to keep getting it back and keep just setting people down. And the more and more you do it, the less and less chance they have of playing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, it's all those nasty cards in one package.
Yeah.
Do you mind if I talk about my number 1 here?
Yeah, let's move on.
saving the best.
No.
Saving the
can't.
best for last. And I will admit, I do play this in a lot of decks because it's good. I mean, a lot of these cards are really good, and you kind of have to play them because of how. But before I reveal the card, when you think of Commander, right? What's the first thing that you say to try to explain the format of Commander to someone, right? You're saying, okay, it's a format where you have 99 cards, and each card has to be different, but you also have a commander that you can play every game, right? So that's usually kind of the way that you first start to talk about the commander. But there are plenty of cards in this format that totally undo the idea, right? And I'm talking about tutors. And the one that I have here that's kind of, in my mind, the biggest, the one that breaks this rule the most is Survival of the Fittest. 2 mana for an enchantment with 1 ability. You can pay a green and discard a creature card to search your library for a creature card, reveal it, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. So not Colony Rats, not Relentless Rats, not Shadowborn Apostles, because
not
having those cards... Throwing Stone. So for me, when I see tutors, I honestly think of tutors as being the reason that black and green are so powerful in Commander. When you think about tutors, black and green are very, very Thermal King. Survival is the worst offender of the tutor of the consistency part of this. So when you think of black and green, you think of them kind of being neck and neck in terms of the number of tutors. Black is just a little bit better, but green can get creatures, it can get all sorts of other stuff as well. And Survival of the Fittest can just keep doing that over and over and over and over and over and over. And then you got blue. Blue's kind of the next best. Then you've got white, and then you got red at the bottom. But when it comes to tutors, that's honestly my biggest reason why I think black and green are so powerful in the format, is because they can find any answer, any threat that they want. I mean, being able to, not with this card obviously, but being able to use Demonic Tutor and Vampiric Tutor and Grim Tutor, being able to use those tutor effects so that you have 4 versions of Torment of Hailfire or Winter Orb or Possibility Storm or Rest in Peace. Like all of these are the reason, when you have a broken card, if you have it like once every 3 games, right, you're not going to be so upset with it. But when you have enough tutors that you can see it every game, I think that's when we start to realize and start to see how much of a problem certain cards are. And I think Survival of the Fittest, for being so little mana to repeatedly tutor any creature, as long as you have creatures in your hand, and like, who was it that said this? New Dark Cloud. It is graveyard fuel too. So you can do it twice and be able to put any creature into your graveyard. You can reanimate them. It's really, really powerful. And for me, I wish that there was kind of, I know this is going to sound strange, but I wish there was like an overarching rule, similar to the deck construction, similar to other stuff, that there was a rule that if you would search your library for something, you instead search, like, let's say the top 20. That's enough to find stuff with, let's say, a fetch land or all sorts of other stuff. In my opinion, I think that would be such an awesome effect to just have in the game, normally,
I'm gonna disagree, because then you have to have the people counting the top so many cards of their deck every single time. And that's going to be really annoying to have to pause the game over and over again so I can count the top 20 and only search the top 20 instead of searching the whole deck. That's the reason I disagree. Also, is just from a gameplay state, it's a terrible idea. Like, I get how it would be cool, and it might be cool on something like MTGO where it just automatically shows you the top 20, but if you're actually doing it in paper, that's terrible for gameplay. It's going to slow your gameplay down so much, it's not going to be worth it.
I don't know.
Go ahead. There's also the aspect of you're searching you're searching fewer cards. So instead of looking through 100 cards, you're only looking through 20. It might not be as easy to kind of plan what you're going to find, but I think the ability to, I mean, people all the time draw 7 cards for their opening hand. It doesn't take them 30 seconds to do that. It takes them just a few seconds. I think doing looking at the top 20, it would take maybe half a minute if you're really slow, I think. To put down 1 card per second, I think it's kind of a slow way to do it. But honestly, I don't see the time being that much of a problem. And if we see fewer tutors because of the fact that they're not as good as they are at the moment, we actually see less shuffling, which takes a lot longer than just searching for a card.
But you're still gonna have the shuffle effect even if you're only looking at the top.
Oh yeah, but you're
gonna have the shuffle effect every time.
This type of rule can make tutors less like overly good that they have to be played in every deck. You're playing white, you have to play Enlightened Tutor. You have no choice,
my problem with more rules is going back again to like the possibility storm conversation of learning curve. The more rules we make where cards don't do what they say, the harder it is for people to come into the format and learn. Because somebody's gonna, especially like if you're a modern player or whatever, where they might use tutors. Imagine being a modern player, never playing EDH, and then coming over and basically like, here's my vampire tutor. I'm gonna go find something. Oh no, you can only look at the top 20. You're gonna look at somebody big. You're gonna assume that they're making this up, right? To mess with you. And then like
maybe
it just creates too much of a learning curve. And honestly, like in terms of power, and I know a lot of people in the chat are already saying that they have disagreed with this being for your top 8. I got to assume that this is a meta call where like you see this card a lot. But if you're talking about tutors being too strong, I would, or like being detrimental or like whatever, I would think the good ones would be the ones that you'd be more concerned with. Like again, Vampiric Tutor is your turn 1 play.
Demonic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Demonic Tutor, like all these low cost tutors where you can pack them all into the same color, and basically like turn 1 tutor, turn 2 tutor, I can go and get my 2 combo pieces, my blood and my bond, and then I just have to make the mana to do it. And like this, you even have to reveal what the card is, so you have to telegraph what you're getting.
Mm-hmm.
The black tutors, a lot of times you don't.
Yeah.
So I disagree with survival being that much of a hated card. I couldn't see a lot of hate going towards survival. I see it being a good removal target, but I couldn't see it being a hated card.
It is a really powerful card too, and definitely like if I drop a survival with the Fittest, a lot of times what I'm going for is, a Regal Force or something of that sort that's going to draw me a ton of cards so that I can abuse this effect more if it doesn't get removed. So I'll be refilling my hand with more creatures so I can use them to tutor for the creatures I want. But I kind of do agree that like as far as like I'm really scared of like tutors, they're a problem. Like there's something but because I mean consistently doing what you want to do is obviously good in Magic, and tutors help you do that. But I'd be more afraid of like a tutor commander than a survival of the fittest, like a Yeeson or a Sidisi or something like that as a commander that I know, okay, they're consistently going to be able to tutor and repeatedly tutor with their commander, and there's nothing I can really do to remove that from them.
Yeah.
Than this card.
They're always, as long as they keep making mana. Yeah.
Now, I
guess the same argument can be made about any of the permanents. So I guess I'm the only one when I said time stretch because there's nothing you can do about it.
Yeah, it just happens. But I was gonna say it's not something that I see a ton of either online or in paper. Definitely not in paper because it's $90 and people don't usually have that. But in my mind, one-off effects of tutors, they're bad. But as soon as they go off, okay, they got their one card. I'm not too upset. But with Survival of the Fittest, if it does not get removed, and sometimes people they're not able to do it, it can get creature after creature after creature after creature after creature, and it just gets out of hand. Now, I definitely agree that having a tutor commander is even worse than this. So I was really tempted to put Captain Sisay as my number 1 pick here, just because it's so easy to go and get, you go and get an Elesh Norn because you drew into your living plane, right? So you make all the lands into 1/1s, you play your Elesh Norn down, and now everybody else except for you loses their lands. I've seen that a couple of times. Somebody in the chat, and actually a couple people here, talked about the anti-tutoring cards, and somebody said, Throma King said, if you want to discourage tutors, run the tutor hate cards. And here's the thing is, I absolutely do that. I definitely try as much as I can. Obviously, I can't do it for every deck, but if I'm playing white, I love playing Aven Mind Sensor. If I'm playing red, I love playing Stranglehold and Widespread Panic. And I'll read Widespread Panic here. The other ones I think are a little bit more well known than this one, but Widespread Panic is a 3-drop enchantment in red that says whenever a spell or ability causes its controller to shuffle his or her library, that player puts a card from his or her hand on top of his or her library. So if you went and you cracked that fetch land, you lose a card from your hand, you got to put it on top of your library. You're going to draw it next turn. And so I love playing these types of cards because I feel like when we're talking about Commander, the reason that, well, at least one of the reasons why it blew up, why it was so famous and it grew to the state that it is now, is because every time you play a game, you might see that card that you haven't seen in the last 3 games. You might be playing against a commander you've never seen before, every time you play the game, there's a possibility, there's a chance for it to be totally different. And every time you're in the situation, instead of it being like a game of chess, where if you're good, if maybe there's someone in here that that knows, professional chess players, you have to memorize about the first half of the game to know what you want to do. One of the reasons that playing chess is fun, at least for me, is because I have to make the decisions in the moment. With Commander, you have to make the decisions in the moment. You have to look at what's going on and kind of assess the situation and figure out what it is that you want to do. With tutors, it kind of makes that a lot more streamlined. And I think that streamlining process, while it's fun, it makes the game more enjoyable to play. I think overall it's a net negative effect, at least in my opinion. I know a lot of people will disagree with that, and that's okay. If you don't disagree with me, I love you, man. It's all good. It's all good. Stranglehold?
I'm going to disagree with your analogy a little bit. As a former chess player, you don't make decisions in the moment. You are typically planning a few turns ahead. If you're not, then you're probably losing.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's the same case for EDH, but I mean in terms of knowing before you sit down to the game, you already have to have a lot of experience knowing, well, if I do this move, I'm anticipating them to do this move, and then I have to do this move. So you kind of prepared, and there's even names for a move.
Yeah.
In chess. So at least that's kind of my analogy here. But
yeah,
it takes away from that aspect. Sorry, I know I get really passionate. I'm sweating here talking about the tutors. I get so passionate about
those tutors, man. Those tutors.
Yeah. Thanks for the cheer, Bushcrafty. Thanks so much,
Bush. Thank you for the 1,500 bits. Holy crap! Did you use Slay the Boss? That's what you did. I see you. All right. Hold on. Let's do a thing. All right. So this outro is going to be a little bit longer than we meant because now we have to do a giveaway. All right, Hacker. What's our giveaway code word?
What's our giveaway?
Yeah. What's our giveaway word that they have to type to enter the giveaway? Give me a word.
Oh, give you a word?
Yeah.
Let's go with stranglehold.
Oh God.
She's making it hard on the poor people.
All right. There you go. So if you want to have a chance to win a free 3DH deck, for those of you who are live in the chat right now, type in Stranglehold. Oh God, we have to go into Discord. Everybody wait! Ah, jeez. Bush, why you do this?
Don't forget the D, Bush.
Yeah, Bush. D boy.
Oh no, to enter our giveaway.
I put my name in. If I win, I'm gonna pick who gets it.
Sorry guys, because I now
Lord
have
knows
to...
I have enough 3DH decks.
If you how about this? If you win, you pick somebody to do the brew with in a one-on-one super secret Phyrexian Walker deck.
Uh-oh.
Alright.
But if I win, I don't have a 3DH deck, so I would actually really enjoy you guys being able to sit down one-on-one with me to make sure that I build one right.
You haven't done a deck yet? What are you doing?
No, I built one and then I realized that it didn't work. I'm not going to say why because then everybody's going to hate me.
Why?
Well, when I asked, it was a previous reflections. I asked, is there a ban list for 3DH? And you guys know. So I assumed that meant that there was 0 cards that were banned. So I wanted to play a deck that had a lot of commander banned cards. And then I realized that since it's online, there's no way to actually play with those cards. Even if we wanted to make them legal, you can't actually join a commander game with them.
No, we meant there's no 3
extra cards
specific.
Yeah, there's no extra cards.
It is in addition, or it's entirely the EDH ban list, and then whatever's in budget for the season.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
So yeah, I still have yet to build one. I just don't know what I want to. Get all the torches and pitchforks, boys.
He's on the council, but he doesn't have a 3DH deck. Get out the torches and pitchforks.
Okay, in my defense, I used to have one. I used to have actually 5.
Yeah.
Back when it first got started, I built 5 monocolored decks, and I had 5 3DH decks. So I did play it at one time. I kind of stopped playing it.
And he's not technically on the council.
Yes, I'm not on the council too. Yeah, that's a good point. Good point.
That's the other thing. There are only 5 of us.
All 5 Praetors. Yeah, there's only 5 Praetors, guys.
We outsourced him.
I'm the Azuri. I'm the Claw of Progress here.
Nobody
Ooh.
wants to hear your excuses. Get your act together. Wow.
Wow.
Hey, if I
Holy.
win, then I'll definitely get my act together. If I don't, then
Oh,
I'll
there's
probably
an opening. Compson says
Oh.
there's always an opening for video editors. Let me put it like that. I would love not to do that.
Well, yeah. DM will always take video editors, so he doesn't
Yeah.
have to do it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't. The 8 hours I do every Saturday, every time we record, is fun.
Mm-hmm. I imagine. Yeah.
This is what you get for outsourcing talent, Praetor. That's fair. Look at what we've done. We got this non-3DH guy. All right.
Oh, wow.
So we'll do the giveaway right at the end. Let's get into a little bit of our closing comments. I think the lists were interesting. I do think some of the effects were really similar, but the cards were all really different. And I think a lot of it is personal experiences and preferences and stuff like that. So like I said, some of this I think is just meta calls. People who have played against certain cards more than other people. Again, if Winter Orb or Time Stretch were to show up a lot more in games that I play, even in paper, I'm sure I would probably hate them a lot more because I could see them being terrible. I mean, they are terrible cards. I just don't deal with them a lot. So, yeah, it was an interesting to see everybody's experiences and history kind of the game come into it. I'm assuming everybody here has been, affected badly by the cards that they named in their list, like I have with Sphere of Safety a million times. So we started playing in
Scarred by Rest in Peace.
Yeah, we were playing standard at first, so she would just get out 4 Sphere of Safeties, and I'd be like, why are you like this? And then she'd have detain like cards in her deck, and I'm like, why can't I just play the friggin' game? Like, why can't I just play the game? So it was terrible. But, of course, for those of you who are watching us on YouTube or listening to us on Libsyn or SoundCloud, make sure you like the content, share the links out on social media with that hashtag MOCL, because we are doing a giveaway where we are giving away Commander versus Playmats every time we hit a 100 subscriber on YouTube milestone. So we're reaching toward 300, then 400, then 500. Of course, we would like to see you join us in the Discord via the link that will be down in the description below of the video or the text or whatever it is. And
And related to that Discord link, I'm actually really curious. I want to hear what everybody's like top 3 hated cards are. And if you want to put cards that are in the same category, you feel free to do that. If you don't, if you want to do like, well, I wanted to do 3 separate like types of cards, I would love to hear what those are in the Discord. You can just put it in like the general Discord, and I would love to like just talk about them. Do you hate the fact that I included aura shards, for example? Like, I would love to like talk about this more.
I think you're gonna get the most comments on the survival of the fittest. When that one popped up, people were like, "What?"
Yeah, probably. But I will definitely defend it. I think, like I said, tutors make the problem cards more. They make them show up more.
Dreadbeard has a good one. Nevermore is a good one for Commander. Turn around and be like, "Don't play your Commander anymore." You son of a. That's a good one. I like that one. And of course, for those of you in the chat, consider becoming a Twitch subscriber. We are trying to beef up our subscriber count so that we can try to bring more content in. Frexion's starting his 3DH Chronicles, which we're going to still try to work out the technical quirks that were happening so that he can basically start doing every 3DH deck ever. He's not going to jump in? No?
Yeah, I've been in contact with the Slobs people to try to fix it, and I'm probably gonna be doing a test stream sometime later this week to see if it works better and I stop having those
lags,
skipped frames. Because apparently there's a big difference between skip frames and drop frames. I learned that through my questions.
I did not know that. That's interesting.
Drop frames is network connection. Skipped frames is other problems. So
like your processing.
Don't have a network problem. Processing problem, stuff like that. But they gave me a few settings to change to see if that would work.
Interesting. Today I learned. All right. Well, for our YouTube and SoundCloud and Libsyn fans, let's do this giveaway really quick. If you haven't done the stranglehold in the chat, make sure you do it now. I'll give you guys another like couple seconds, and then a couple seconds more because there's a delay, and then we're gonna do the giveaway. So, Frexion, you had an honorary mention for today, didn't you? Did you talk about it?
Well, I didn't talk about my honorary mention. My honorary mention was Blood Moon.
Oh, snap.
Blood Moon is just so feel bads.
Why? What's wrong with Blood Moon? I mean,
I love it.
It gives you the worst mana.
No. It doesn't give you plains. It gives you mountains.
Good point.
I'd rather
Good
have
point.
plains and mountains most of the time.
All right, so drum roll. Let's see who's winning. DP Cross, free 30H deck. Thank you again, Bushcrafty, for finishing off yourself, which is a weird thing to say out of context. So we will get together. We will try to do a 3DH brew in the Discord. I like to do it in the Discord because it gives everybody a chance to kind of like pitch in, and then the person who wins gets to like finalize what cards go in, what cards come out, etc., etc. So the deck becomes yours, but you get a lot of different like perspectives on everything. So we'll do that in the Discord later, and we will see you guys next Wednesday. It is going to be Halloween. I might even show up in a costume. You don't know.
Ooh.
Don't judge me. You don't know my life. I could be a cosplayer. I'm not going to cosplay.
Can you show up in like a hospital like patient since you're sick?
Hopefully I'll be
you can
better
do
by
that for
then. Are you
Halloween
saying that
costume,
you
right?
want me to be sick until Halloween?
I don't want you to be sick, but you are sick, I will say.
Wow. Dude, you look like just he basically just said you look like crap, DM.
I can't see you.
Wow.
I don't know what you look like.
You be
I
watching
just
the
hear your
stream, I don't
voice.
know. No,
I can't.
I'm probably gonna come
I
in
can't.
my every year my wife and I wear our Hogwarts robes out while we take the kids out, so I'm probably gonna show up in that.
Oh.
So maybe I'll run a wizard deck or something. You don't know.
Nice. Cool.
Maybe I'll be on theme. Ooh.
You're
Alright.
saying I should run a wizard deck.
Once upon a time, I had challenged a friend of mine on Twitter to a Harry Potter game where we were going to 1v1 EDH decks on MTGO. He was a big Griffin, no. He was a Slytherin fan. And I was like, no, Ravenclaws are definitely better because that's my house, right? Like, I mean, they're the smarter ones, so let's go. And he, like, slandered the Ravenclaw name. So I made a video on YouTube and called him out saying, let's go, let's do this. You make a Slytherin deck, I'm going to make a Ravenclaw deck, and we're going to see who's really better. Unfortunately, schedules never made it out because he was his wife was having a kid, right? So, you know, important life things happened. But maybe I'll put some work into that in the next couple days, and I'll come out with a Ravenclaw deck in my Ravenclaw robe with my wand and whatnot, and I'll find some other crap around me. And we'll have Harry Potter Magic the Gathering.
That's pretty cool, actually. I would totally watch that.
Halloween.
So,
Yeah.
so you're saying you need someone to do a cat tribal deck for Gryffindor, and then
Oh man, is there people already signed up
We
for
we
Wednesday?
need Sneck tribal for Slytherin, and I don't even know what to do for Hufflepuff.
I think we said Beast just for Badgers because there's no Badgers,
Yeah.
so like you just have to kind of do Beast, especially if like it's Squirrel
I guess
Nest
you could have like
legal?
Arnarlid. That's close enough to a badger, right?
I feel like the better representation of Hufflepuff is probably like Feldegriff, no?
I don't
The
know.
hippogriff. Yeah, you're giving people hippos. That's really in line with what like their mindset and their mentality, no?
But it's not a Badger.
I know, but you know, there
Hey,
are badgers
hey.
anyways, so
Goreclaw could be a fluffy Badger. You don't know.
it could be.
All right, guys, we'll talk about this in the Discord. Make sure you join via the link down below, or if you type !Discord in chat, it'll pop up a link if you're not already a member there. Again, consider being a Twitch subscriber to support us and help us do silly content like this. Maybe we'll do cosplay streams every once in a while if you guys, if we have enough subscribers where I can kind of justify paying into making or buying a costume. I don't know. If you guys like it, we'll do it every once in a while, like once a quarter of the year or something like that. But until next time, guys, that's all we got. You can find us on Twitter at twitter.com/PraetorMagic, youtube.com/PraetorMagic, facebook.com/PraetorMagic, and Magical Hacker. You have your own set of social media stuff with a lot of really cool resources out on Tapped Out, I believe. So if you want to go ahead and talk about that real quick.
Yep, tap. Yeah. Yeah, so you can find me everywhere. Twitter, magical__hacker. Tapped Out is magical hacker with no space, no underscore, nothing. Magic Online is magical_hacker. YouTube is magical hacker MTG. I think that's it, right? It's everything.
Yep. And then for those of you watching this on YouTube, the links will be down in the video description below so you have an easier access to them. So until Wednesday, happy Halloween, and we'll see you then. Peace.
See ya.